Cowboys 11H Cooper NeillStaff photographer, College Football Hall of Fame member and former NFL player John Wooden speaks during the 3rd Annual Sports Days Football Heroes Banquet at the Omni Hotel on Thursday, January 17, 2013 in Dallas, Texas. Cooper Neill. The Dallas Morning News by Kevin Sherrington, staff columnist at Sherrington. Last summer, before a year-old protest drove the division in America even deeper, John Wooden contacted one of Colin Kaepernick's representatives with a request. A plea, really? Get your client to talk, he begged. Let everyone know he meant no disrespect. Do that, Wooden said, and they'd stand behind him, just like they did Muhammad Ali. Worked in '67, and in times even more contentious than these. No reason it couldn't help 50 years later. It's just so obvious, Wooden said, that we can't sit idly by and let it go as it is. Wooden was never the type just to let things go. Couldn't do it in the '60s, when he told Martin Luther King Jr. he couldn't join his protests. If anyone spat on him, he said, he wouldn't take it sitting down. He takes it no better now, added he, and chairman of the Fritz Pollard Alliance, which, through its collaboration with the NFL on diversity and coaching hires, led to the Rooney Rule. One of the most dignified and respected men in football, Wooden has spent 50 years in the sport, included induction into the College Football Hall of Fame, a couple of Pro Bowl seasons making room for Jim Brown, and 25 years as a scouting and personnel man, including 16 with the Cowboys. But back in the summer of '67, in a Hilton on the east side of Cleveland, he was the big guy on the back row, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. Seated in front of him, left to right, Bill Russell, Ali Brown and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, heavyweights all. They'd come Bobby Mitchell and Willie Davis and Curtis McClinton, too, because Wooden had asked. It would eventually become known as the Ali Summit, a watershed moment in American sports. They came with questions of their own. Some knew Ali through his donations to the Black Economic Union, which Brown and his roommate, Wooden, had co-founded. Everyone else knew Ali because of his impact, the most polarizing figure in sports, stripped of his heavyweight title after refusing a month earlier to be inducted into the U.S. Army. Though he claimed status as a conscientious objector, based on his religious beliefs, the argument didn't go over with the public or authorities. Anyone supporting him would be subject to persecution, so the athletes needed to know Ali's sincerity. They weren't the kind to be easily convinced. Here's the real reason Jerry Jones gave his Cowboys players an anthem ultimatum after the cross-examination in a back room. Ali talked 2 hours straight, and it came down to these: if I have to go to jail, I will. They backed him to a man at the news conference afterward. Might not have seemed to do much good. 2 weeks later, Ali was convicted of draft evasion. He got 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Never served any time, and the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the conviction in 1971, but it cost him 3 years in the ring, just the same. Even so, the summit provided a platform for sports' greatest names as they put their careers in jeopardy to back a controversial figure making an unpopular case. And for the first time, maybe, people had to think instead of react. Wooden thinks they'd do the same now. I don't understand why he isn't speaking out, he said of Kaepernick. Especially when you see all the chaos. I truly believe he's allowing someone in his group to play a game he doesn't want to play. What was Mike Ditka thinking last week? Wooden stands up for what's right, because he saw firsthand what it meant for him when others did the same. George Washington Carver High was too small to field a football team in Carlsbad, NM, in the early '50s, but he was afforded the opportunity and enrollment at another high school because the principal put it to a vote of the all-white student body. His all-state play earned him a scholarship to the University of Colorado, where the coach, Al Ward, told managers of restaurants and hotels in Utah and Kansas and Florida that if they didn't serve all his players, they wouldn't serve any. Wooden also remembers Paul Brown's speech: every training camp he didn't have any black Browns, he didn't have any white Browns. Everybody in this room, the legendary coach would say, is a Cleveland Brown. If anybody has a problem with that, let us know, and we'll put you on your way. Wooden feels a responsibility to those men as well as to his own conscience. He remembers those times and wonders what Mike Ditka was thinking when he said last week there was no oppression he was aware of over the last century, a comment he's since apologized for. I couldn't believe Mike said that, Wooden said. Mike Ditka played right here in Dallas, knowing full well there were areas of this city where blacks couldn't live or go eat. I guess I agree with Joe Namath. Let's check and see if Mike knows what oppression means. He'll be the first to say there's been great progress. But Mike Ditka never had a shotgun under his neck when he's trying to cross the 14th Street Bridge in Washington, D.C. and AACP Jerry Jones' anthem comments are tone-deaf, violate Cowboys' constitutional rights. Scene. It's the late 60s, and Wooten is riding in the front passenger seat of a car making its way from Washington National to a meeting with a federal official. The driver is Sid Williams, one of the football players at the Alley Summit. Before they know what's happening, they're surrounded by police cruisers and cops walking toward them, some carrying guns. "Where are you going?" one cop asks. Williams bristles, and Wooten feels a shotgun under his chin. "Sydney," Wooten says, "shut your mouth." Times have changed since then, without question. But not as much as you might think. Wooten has a story for that, too. When you're the wrong color in the wrong neighborhood. It's 1992, and he lives in a predominantly white area outside Philadelphia, where he's a vice president of player personnel for the Eagles. He and his wife are driving home from a movie a little past midnight when a cruiser pulls up behind them. Lights flash. Wooten stops, and the cop approaches, gun drawn. "Where are you going?" "Going home, officer." "What do you mean going home?" "We live in those condos just to the right." Cop asks for his driver's license, makes a call, comes back and tells Wooten to get a Pennsylvania ID. Message sent. A 55-year-old man and his wife driving the speed limit a couple of blocks from home, guilty of being the wrong color in the wrong neighborhood. Behind the scenes of today's locker room, after Cowboys met with Jerry Jones on Anthem. "This is what we're talking about," Wooten said, "and yet people don't seem to think this happens in the world today. This happens and worse, which is why Wooten empathizes with Kaepernick and believes in his higher purpose. He wishes only that He'd have been able to talk to him before his initial protest. He'd have told him to think it out, consult with his coach and general manager. Let's talk about what you're thinking," He'd have told the young man, and go at it another way. Had he been able to do that, Wooten is sure that Kaepernick would still have a job in the NFL. "He's good enough, better," Wooten said, "than a couple of starting quarterbacks. The protest is probably too far down the road to change that outcome now. All that's left," Wooten hopes, "is a platform and an opportunity to turn the rhetoric away from an inflammatory gesture." Wooten wasn't offended by Kaepernick's knee, but his old roommate, Jim Brown, was. Even so, Wooten says Brown is ready to stand behind Kaepernick, just as they did Ali 50 years ago. All they need is a time and a place. 2 weeks ago, Wooten asked Kaepernick's reps again for a chance to help. He was told that a plan was coming in a day or two. Instead, silence. "It hurts to see our country divided the way it is," Wooten said, "and to see people using this to divide it even more than it is. But the only guy who can speak to this is Mum." Colin Kaepernick would do himself a favor, listening to John Wooten. So would we all. Twitter @Sharon Tindman.